Hello Penguinauds, I'm the Bearded Penguin and welcome back to Fall of Kerbin World War II era. Today I'm going to show you some of the tanks I've been working on, and we've changed things quite a bit since Tape made his video. We've tweaked all the guns a pretty significant amount, especially those derp guns because they had a pretty ridiculous rate of fire. They didn't really do enough damage, and also Tape's obviously been working on his tanks a lot. He's been receiving a lot of flack in his comments about how his tanks looked. Okay, just accept the fact that they're prototypes. I'm not showing my stuff until they're 100% finished, whereas Tape's been showing his stuff while he's still developing them, so he can get your advice and see what you think and get any tips or whatever while he's still making them. I don't take your advice at all, so does that make me an arsehole? Probably does. Anyway, on to our new armoured vehicles. Well, this isn't actually an armoured vehicle. This is a self-propelled gun. This is the SM-20D Viper, because there are 4 variants of this. This is our new self-propelled anti-aircraft sort of unit. And you can launch 5 of these a turn, but they have to be unarmoured. And they can carry a pretty large variety of guns, actually. This current variant has got this 3-inch naval gun. This has got a massive range, so we're going to use this for taking out enemy bombers, hopefully distract them before they can, I don't want to say unload, because that sounds a bit weird, but release their bombs. There you go. Because we can't shoot bombs out the sky anymore. We stopped guard mode doing that. We didn't stop guard mode, we just made the bombs indestructible, because that was a bit weird in World War I, having things shoot bombs out the sky. But yeah, we've lowered the altitude ceiling to 4 kilometers, because the altitude they were getting to in World War I was a bit stupid. So yeah, things have to actually brave the anti-aircraft fire in order to drop bombs now. So this is going to be exceptionally useful. It's not particularly fast firing or particularly accurate, but it's going to harass bombers at long range, which is essentially all we need it to do. But the main workhorse is probably going to use the 37mm flat gun. But there's nothing particularly interesting about this vehicle. So, onto our actual tanks. First up is our light tank, the SM-2 Mamba. Now, the tank nerds amongst you will have recognised immediately, or maybe not, depending on how good this recreation is. Yeah, it's a Panzer II. I'm not restricting myself to using Soviet vehicles. I had a lot of comments on the previous video saying, oh, you have to use a PE-8 instead of a B-17 for your bomber. No, I don't. I can build whatever I want. Just because I'm a Soviet analog doesn't mean I have to build Soviet stuff when there's so much more interesting stuff that was made in World War II. So this is a Panzer II. It's even got the Panzer II turret, and I've tweaked this quite a bit. The mod developer, Spanner Monkey, he didn't really balance the guns. He just sort of, he made the models, of course, props to him. These models are amazing. I really love them. But we've got tetrads to balance most of the guns, but then I tweaked a bunch of them, and I balanced this one myself. So instead of just firing endlessly, it fires a burst of 8 shots, and then it has to reload. It takes about 5 seconds for it to reload or so. And this gun is very short range. It can shred targets at close range, so it's great in urban combat, but when it comes to long range stuff, it cannot fire beyond 1.5 kilometers. And even at that range, its rounds bounce very, very easily. So it's a very close range tank. It's basically just here to be mobile and just to sort of capture territory and do various errands for us. It's not a main battle tank by any stretch of the imagination, but we can launch 5 of them a turn, so I guess it kind of balances itself out. But we're going to be using these to take cities and just sort of be our general workhorse. Anyway, onto our first actual tank with some firepower. This is the PT-3A Python. This is our tank destroyer. You can launch 4 of these a turn, and just like the light tank, it has 1 layer of armor all around. This is the only vehicle we have, or besides the self-propelled gun, that isn't actually based off of anything in real life. I just took my medium tank chassis and heavily modified it and stuck a giant gun in it, which is essentially what World War II tank destroyers in real life were. They just modified chassis with giant guns stuck in them. But this is the first variant, the A variant, which has a 75mm high-velocity Panther turret. Oh my god, this thing is powerful. It's ridiculously accurate. As you can see, it's got a massive barrel, and it fires armor-piercing shells that can go straight through the front and straight out the back of a heavy tank, or possibly even a super heavy tank. These are very powerful rounds. It hasn't got a great rate of fire. It's 8 rounds per minute. It's alright. But these things are really deadly at long range. If something's advancing over a long field or whatever, and you're up against one of these things, yeah, you're going to have some problems. Of course, at close range, it's not great. I mean, in cities, it's great. It's fine because you can block off an entire street with it, and you can sort of use the buildings to cover your flanks. But out in the open, as a defensive unit, you need maybe some light tanks to cover its flanks because, of course, it hasn't got a fully traversable turret, which is its biggest downfall. Well, a combination of a few of these and some light tanks, they should be able to put up a pretty good defensive sort of wall. But these are not offensive units. You could use them offensively, but it would not go very well. But there's another variant of our tank destroyer which has a 105mm howitzer, which fires high explosive shells instead of armor piercing. Now, these are great at long range because armor piercing shells have a habit of bouncing at long range. They lose their penetration capability very, very rapidly over distance. That sounded really weird. But high explosive shells do not have this problem because, of course, they explode on impact. So this is great at long range, and also it's pretty good against larger tanks because the thing about armor piercing is they punch holes in enemy tanks, but when you've got tanks as massive as Tape's super heavy tank, you can punch a lot of holes in that before it actually blows up. You know, there's a lot of tank there to blow away. So having high explosive kind of removes that problem because it does splash damage instead of just, you know, punching holes. Everything I'm saying sounding weird, isn't it? Oh, anyway, just try and ignore what I'm saying. But 105mm howitzer certainly packs a hell of a punch. It hasn't got a great rate of fire. It's only 6 rounds per minute. But yeah, it's certainly a pretty decent gun, and it should serve us relatively well. So we're probably going to use these in sort of equal measure, these two different variants. But anyway, I've been holding back far too long. On to the star of the show, the PT-34 Cobra. Yeah, it's a T-34. I mean, what else could I build for my medium tank? I'm playing as the Soviet analog. I have to build a T-34. Not everything has to be Russian, obviously, but the T-34, I had to build it. I'm a little embarrassingly proud of how close this looks to an actual T-34, besides the wheels instead of treads, obviously. You don't need to tell me. But otherwise, I'm really, really proud of how this looks. The thing about medium tanks, you can launch 3 of them per turn. They can have 2 layers of armor on the front, and it can have 1 everywhere else. With 2 layers of sloped armor on the front, this thing's actually really difficult to damage from the front. Shots have a pretty nasty habit of bouncing off it. So at long range, especially, Tape's going to have some serious problems destroying these things. I've sent 3 of these against my tank destroyers, and they've if they manage to close the range, they are absolutely deadly. The gun on it is pretty lackluster. It's just a 76mm, obviously T-34 turret, but it's not particularly powerful. But it's got a decent rate of fire, though, I guess. But up against the Panther turret or any heavy tank turrets, it's not particularly effective whatsoever. But at close range, it's fine. You know, it does the job. It does what we need it to do, so it's perfectly acceptable. It's just, it looks so nice. I'm so proud of it. I hope you guys like it. I know, as I said, Tape's been getting a lot of flack for his stuff. His stuff isn't finished. I made sure I perfected everything I built before I show it to you guys, because I know you guys can be very mean in the comments. I hope you guys like this because, oh, I'm so proud of it, and it should hopefully serve us well in the war to come. And also, in the little scenario we're going to be doing later, we're going to have some urban combat. Tape's going to place some of my tanks, my tank destroyers and heavy tanks, in and around Kermingrad, and we're going to try and take it back. Should be pretty awesome. But anyway, without any further ado, let me show you the last, but certainly not least, tank in this lineup. The PT-6 Boa. Yes, it's a Tiger. Yes, that was a Nazi tank. No, I'm not a Nazi. I just wanted to make a Tiger. What's wrong with that, guys? I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I've seen quite a few people in the comments who are quite disappointed that Tape didn't make a Tiger. I was a little disappointed he didn't make a Sherman as his main tank. I was fairly certain he was going to make at least a Sherman, but for some reason he didn't, for whatever reason. So yeah, I just thought, okay, well, if Tape isn't going to make a Tiger, someone has to. So I thought, it's down to me. This thing is a beast. Now, Tape's decided to go for the sort of doctrine of having his tanks massive, not particularly compact, so they're just massive bomb targets, but their armor is quite spaced. This thing is very compact, but its armor is all sort of welded together in one sort of slab, which means you basically just cannot penetrate the front of this tank. So Tape's one sort of worked around, it's very, very resistant against high explosives, so you can't get multiple pieces of armor with one shell. This is very, very tough against armor piercing. You can fire at least 5 shells from a Cobra into the front of this thing and not do any damage. It's a beast. Got 3 layers of armor on the front and 2 everywhere else. You can launch 2 of these per turn. I haven't designed a super heavy tank because I think they're a massive waste of resources. I know Tape's going wild with his double derp guns. I hope he has fun with that, but I think they're a big waste of resources and they're a massive liability, because if they get bombed, then you've just lost all of your tank resources for that turn. So I don't think it's a great investment. And I've also made my tanks as small as possible, nice and compact, unlike Tape, because I think I fear aircraft a bit more than he does. But the gun on this thing is also similarly amazing. It's an 88mm Tiger gun, obviously, and at long range this thing is deadly. At close range this thing is deadly. It's just amazing. It's rated fire, even though in real life the rate of fire was amazing. We just, for balance reasons, the rate of fire is only 8 rounds per minute, but it's more than adequate because, as you can see, it only needs to hit once. Oh, oh, it never gets old. Oh, there's just nothing left, and we're not really firing from the front, so it's not exactly fair. So let's move around the front of one of these tank destroyers and put a round into it. I probably should have moved around the front of the Cobra, actually, because it's got 2 layers around the front. I could have shown maybe some bouncing. But saying that, this 88mm doesn't bounce very often. It only bounces rounds at a long range. But this thing is very accurate and very, very deadly. Not quite as accurate or long range as the Panther turret, but it does a lot more damage when it hits. So this is why I put it on the heavy tank, and I put the Panther gun on my tank destroyer instead. Because I think for the tank destroyer, you have to keep them at long range, otherwise you're stuffed. So having a more accurate gun is more important. But with this, having a more damaging gun is great, so you can actually use it effectively in close range as well. Let's fire at one of the front of one of these. Oh! If that was a 76mm, that would have bounced, but fortunately it's an 88mm, so this thing, it does not bounce very often. It just executes. Oh, I love this gun so much. I love this tank so much. We probably won't use them in urban combat, because if you manage to outflank them with a couple of light tanks, that's the problem with this thing, with the slow rate of fire. You can basically just bum rush it with light tanks at close range, and it can be shredded. So that is its biggest downfall, really. You kind of want to be using it in massive open fields, the same as the tank destroyers. Although tank destroyers can be useful, just because they're so cheap. They can be useful in urban combat. But we probably won't be launching 2 of these per turn, probably just 1 of these and maybe 2 tank destroyers as well, just to back them up, because they are very expensive. But as you can see, oh, it pays off. They're just wonderful pieces of machinery. And we're going to be going up against 2 of them in the up-and-coming battle. I've asked Tape to position 4 of my tank destroyers and 2 heavy tanks in Kermingrad, and we're going to try and take it from him. So here we are advancing into Kermingrad. We're actually at a pretty significant disadvantage here. We only have 1 light tank and 3 mediums up against 2 heavy tanks and 4 tank destroyers. Plus the fact that Tape's had time to prepare and we have no idea where his tanks are. So he's probably put them in tiny little alleyways and on every single corner. So this is, it's going to be pretty intense trying to find these things. That's why we're just advancing with the light tank first, because if this gets taken out by a surprise 88mm, it doesn't matter quite so much as if one of the mediums were taken out. But of course this 20mm is actually pretty damn effective at close range, as I said. I mean, it's the only place it can really be effective with the short range and its tendency to bounce when it hits sloped armor. But in testing, it's actually been pretty much the bane of Boa heavy tanks, because the big problem with the Boa is the lack of sloped armor, and sloped armor can easily bounce these 20mm, but with the Boa not really having any sloped armor at the front, if you get a 90-degree angle against the front of a Boa, the Mamba can actually take it out with relative ease if you manage to take it out in your 8-round burst before or manage to miss the 88mm shot that the Boa will inevitably fire at you. But anyway, just advancing with the Mamba, doing a little bit of scouting, and then as soon as the coast is clear, just bringing up the Cobras to back it up. Taking this very slowly, and when I was actually doing this, it was much, much slower. When you're in one of these cities and also you have this number of tanks in it, the game runs about as fast as a PowerPoint presentation, which is why I'm not doing live commentary, I'm doing post commentary. So of course I know where the tanks are now, but at the time I had no idea, which made this really rather intense. It made it really quite a lot like the film Fury, which I know Tape's a massive fan of. I didn't really like it quite so much, although the battle scenes were pretty intense. But yeah, we are literally waiting to get ambushed by a tiger here, so it's pretty intense. So there we are, just moving our Cobras up and then continuing to scout with our Mamba and just moving forward along this street. It did actually take at least about 15 minutes to find out where these tanks were. Just sort of moving forward along this street, just sort of checking each angle, making sure there aren't any tanks, and then a surprise 88mm just slams into our tank. That scared the absolute crap out of me. There's a boa and a python. We put some passing 20mm shots into it, but with the sloped armor, they all bounce off. We do very, very minimal damage. We just about dodge a second 88 shot, and then we managed to pull into cover behind this building, and there it is. Oh, they look so terrifying. They look so much like tigers that they really are quite intimidating. But with our mediums bringing up the rear, we just dash forward and sort of bum rush it. So we've got two of our mediums have a firing solution, and of course our light tank. So with the boa distracted, and with it missing its first shot, and the python also missing its first shot, we managed to get it in quite a few shots into the boa, and just about managed to take out the command module. Unfortunately, we then have to reload, and the python's reload is just that little bit faster than ours, so we lose the Mamba. I don't know how the hell that thing actually survived the first shot it took. That thing should not be able to take an 88 into the side like that. I have no idea how it managed to survive it, but somehow it did, and we managed to take out the python. So we've got 3 mediums up against now 3 pythons and a single boa, and now we have a general idea of where they are. So I've thought, okay, it's inevitable there are going to be a few, like at least one tank destroyer around this corner. So we just advance very carefully, very sort of in a pretty tight column here, because we want to be able to easily back up our allies if we get shot. What I didn't expect would be 3 tank destroyers around one corner. Oh god. Yeah, did not even stand a chance. Okay, so at this point I'm bringing forward the next 2 tanks. I think, okay, let's try and catch them while they're reloading. But we took a little bit too long, and they've just about reloaded by the time we come around the corner, and yeah, we don't even get a chance to turn our turret. But our 3rd tank just about manages to scream to a halt behind the wreck of the first tank and get a shot in and destroy the first python. Using the wreck of one of our destroyed tanks as cover works really, really well. For some reason we have quite a bit of trouble actually destroying the tank destroyer that's facing the other way. Of course, that was probably Tape's insurance in case we came round from a different direction. But we're bouncing a lot of shots from the rear of this tank destroyer. I have no idea what the hell the rear of this thing's made of. It's only 1 layer of armor, but we just can't seem to get through it. But after another shot from that 105, our cover is completely gone. So if we miss the next shot against it, we're going to be toast. Here we go. Come on, who can reload faster? Fire! Oh, and there we go. Taking out the tank destroyers. Rate of fire clearly being the key thing here, and with them only having 1 layer of armor, this gun is more than enough to take out a tank destroyer in 1 hit, provided it doesn't bounce, of course. But then we encounter the final heavy tank, put a shot into it, and it does absolutely nothing. Oh god, oh god. Trying to outrun the gun. Nope, take cover behind the tank destroyer, and oh no, no. The boa doesn't recognize the word cover. Just incinerates us in 1 shot. And we failed. But from a logistical point of view, that's actually a tactical victory. But it was pretty damn intense. I hope you've enjoyed this. I've been the Penguin, and I'll see you all next time for some ships.